A boycott of the Olympics? I'm Ed Kelley, editor of the Oklahoman. With me from Washington is Mark Green, national editorial writer for the Oklahoman and a frequent commentator here on News OK TV. The crackdown on dissidents in Tibet has put China in the world's spotlight just 4 months before the Olympic Games in Beijing. Now some politicians around the world are asking aloud whether there ought to be a boycott, at least of the opening ceremonies at the Games. Mark, should China's action in Tibet prompt such a backlash from countries like the United States?
Well, that's a hard call, Ed. A number of countries are talking about some kind of a boycott of the opening ceremony, you know, the big parade into the stadium with all the athletes and the flags, which they see as a good way to deliver a message to the officials in Beijing.
This is what Nancy Pelosi was talking about yesterday, right? She was calling for perhaps a boycott, maybe not, of the opening ceremonies.
Yeah, she said that President Bush ought to think about boycotting the opening ceremony. The president has been adamant, though, in recent days about that he wants to go, that the game should be about the athletes and not about politics, and he says he's going to go, as does Great Britain's Gordon Brown says he's going to go.
Should there be a boycott, though, of at least the opening ceremonies, or are we harking back to 1980 when we had a full-fledged boycott of the Olympic Games?
Well, my own opinion, Ed, is that probably the best time for making statements about the Olympics was 7 years ago when they awarded the Games to China. It seems to me that unless you just want to get back into another ping pong match where, you know, one group boycotts one group's
right.
or one country's Olympics and then they retaliate 4 years later, that maybe they ought to just leave the Games alone and try to let the athletes take center stage.
How many Americans do you really think recall exactly why we boycotted the Games in 1980?
Well, I don't know. That's a really good question. Thankfully, we got Wikipedia and other things on the net where you can look up that kind of information. Many people may not remember that the Soviets had invaded Afghanistan,
right.
And President Carter at that time said that unless they pulled the troops out of there, he was going to keep our athletes at home.
And lots of athletes were left on the sidelines.
Well, that's right. A lot of careers, a lot of hard work, a lot of people who only had one window to show what they could do on the field of competition saw their dreams go away. And then, of course, 4 years later, the Soviet Union still existed then, and about 13 other countries boycotted the Summer Games that were held in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I know someone here in Oklahoma City who was exactly in that position. Mark, let's talk about China's image that it tries to project to the rest of the world, not just now, but particularly going forward. Do you think the image that they project will change once the Olympic Games are over this summer?
Well, you know, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, I would say that probably the people in Tibet say that nothing has ever changed in China, and that the crackdown that they've been experiencing is just more of the same from Beijing. Clearly, China wants to project an image of progressivism, of a clean country. They're even talking about cutting down their pollution to create a cleaner window for the Games to occur. They want to be seen as having a free market economy and allowing more freedom for their people. The history suggests, though, that underneath it all there's a pretty strong and repressive regime that maybe is just going to go away for a little while and will crack back with a vengeance after the Games are over.
It's still a communist country, right?
It's still a communist country, that's right.
Mark, thank you. Stay here with News OK on updates on this issue throughout the spring and summer as we head to the Olympics later this year.